Good evening. I'm Mayor Javier Figueroa, and I'm calling this regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, June 2nd, 2025 to order. And we'll start with the roll call. Will the city clerk do the round?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Boykin?
I'm here.
Councilmember Worthington?
Present.
Councilmember McCluskey? I'm here. Councilmember Fleming is excused. Councilmember Grassi? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Wood?
Present.
Mayor Figueroa?
I'm here also.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
We'll move on to item number 3. Will Councilmember Boykin lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
My pleasure, Mayor. All, if you join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Boykin.
My pleasure.
And we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Call for a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. We'll move on to public comments. Is there anyone online for public comments?
Mayor, nobody online.
And I don't see a list of any.
No one.
And anybody here present from the public that would like to come up and provide public comment? Seeing none, I'm closing public comments at this time. We're moving on to item number 6A through 6C is the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
Second.
Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. And we'll move on to the public hearing and council consideration. And we'll start with item number 7, carry forward budget and adjustments. This is a public hearing to consider the passage of an ordinance to amend the 2025-2026 biennium budget for the 2024 carry forward appropriations and other adjustments. Our staff will be Leslie Blaisdell, our finance director.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. Tonight, for public hearing and council consideration, is the carry forward budget adjustment. Council reviewed this during study session held on May 19th. The carry forward adjustments recognize the carry forward of funding from 2024 budget for reappropriation in 2025. And the reappropriation is comprised primarily of beginning fund balance adjustments, capital improvement projects, internal service fund carry forwards, and continuing grant funding. We have also included some other requested adjustments with this adjustment. So included in this, as you recall from our last meeting, we have expenditure carry forwards. We have some expenditure adjustments to get that 30th birthday event money in there, and some cost increases that came in after the budget was approved. And then there were 3 new item requests actually 4, I apologize, some temp help for records archiving, some professional service dollars for the City Attorney Department, a 0.8 FTE communication specialist, and additional funding for cybersecurity. There were questions at the last meeting about those last 2, and I was provided to council in between meetings. So there were some revenue adjustments to some of our taxes and real estate excise tax based on how monies are coming in and new projections. And then lastly, our one-time monies. We did include that last-minute cybersecurity, so it is $1.386 million. And again, the staff recommendation is right now to leave that in the ending fund balance as we see what happens over the coming year as we prepare to pay off that $17 million in debt next year to make sure we have the funding to do that. All of these adjustments are included in the forecast that is provided at the back of the packet. And we have, this forecast goes out to 2034. There's adequate funding in all of the funds with all these adjustments included. So with that, I will conclude my presentation.
Well, thank you, Ms. Blaisdell. And as always, I'd like to provide a moment for council members to ask any clarifying questions. We'll get into debate and conversation later on, but at this point, if there's any clarifications of what Ms. Blaisdell said in her report, this is a good time. I don't see any hands go up, so we'll move on to the open public hearing and take comments. Our City Clerk, is there anybody online?
There's nobody online, Mayor.
Anybody here in the public that would like to come up? I don't see anybody approaching us, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And we'll go to council consideration. I'd like to call for a motion to consider the carry forward budget adjustment.
Mayor, I move that we pass an ordinance amending the 2025-2026 biennial budget for the 2024 carry forward appropriations and other adjustments.
I'll second.
Thank you. And we'll move on to council discussion and et cetera. So anybody? Yes, Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Figueroa. Let's see. At the previous meeting during our study session, I had a couple of different questions, as did many council members. From the conversations I've had with staff, with the city manager and others, the questions about the cybersecurity were answered in my mind. Also the questions about additional staffing and the need for that was also resolved. And so I just wanted to report that out. If there's public that are watching, there's details that are available there, but I won't bore them, or won't take everyone's time with those details. Thank you.
I don't see any other comments. I do like to have a comment, and that is that having a carry forward such as this with the amount of dollars and corrections is all positive. And I just came from a vacation down south, and because my daughter went to work for actually a city police department, I got to meet some of the folks in that city. Plus, they also I met with the mayor and the police chief, but also met with a couple other mayors from nearby towns like Chandler and Gilbert and Mesa. And it was really, they just wanted together. I seen some of them at NLC's conferences. And what's really interesting is, of course, we're all going through money. It's always a topic. But I won't go through the details, but I can tell you that this is a really easy carry forward to discuss and move forward. So that's all. That's my only comment. So we will go on for a vote, and I think that we won't have to do a work call. Can I have everybody that in favor of the carry forward budget adjustment say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Seeing none, passed. Ms. Blaisdell, thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, Middle Housing HB 1110 legislative compliance. We have staff member Kevin Brisky, he's the Development and Economic Development Director, and Kenneth George, our Planning Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Kevin Brisky with the Community and Economic Development Department, here with Kenneth George, Planning Manager with the department as well. For council consideration tonight is an ordinance amending portions of Titles 13, 19, 21 of the University Place Municipal Code relating to creating more housing options in conformity with recent state legislation. A little background on that in kind of broad terms. This state legislation requires the city to pass an ordinance to come into conformity with middle housing, which is to allow up to 2 dwelling units on every lot and up to 4 if one is designated affordable. It also has the optional proposal to allow design standards to be imposed on middle housing as well, which is in the proposed amendments, and a unit lot subdivision process. The Planning Commission held 5 meetings, including a public hearing before making their recommendation to City Council on March 19th. The City Council has held study sessions back in January and in April 21st to go over the proposed amendments in more detail. At the last study session, there was a couple of questions. I'd just like to kind of provide some clarification on those before opening it up to answer any questions in for the public hearing. One of the questions that came up is regarding the affordability requirement. In the state law, for the up to the 4 units with one of them designated affordable has 2 different criterias. One is for a for sale product, and that is for somebody or a household making 80% of the area median income, and that would lead to a sale price of approximately $355,000. That's based on a 30-year mortgage for a middle housing unit type, and the mortgage rate was based at its current mortgage rate. So that could fluctuate as mortgage rates fluctuate or as the area median income changes every year. For a for rent product, the for rent is based on a household making 60% of the area median income based on the HUD number. And for example, a 2-bedroom unit would rent with utilities at $1,564. So on the for rent product, that has to include the utilities in the rent, and that's based off of the state legislation. And the affordability, if someone was to try to do that option with the up to the 4 units, with one of them designated affordable, they would have to record a 50-year covenant against the property. That covenant then runs with the land, and so if the land transfers ownership, it runs with the land and applies to any new ownership of that property. The second question that came up was on the unit lot subdivision. And there were some questions there because that's a new process, and it's a way to subdivide the property and potentially then sell off one of the middle housing units. And it provides for a way to do it in a different way than just doing a condominiumize of the site. It generally leads to an easier financial transactions. The banks like it better to be able to do that sort of fee simple transaction. The unit lot subdivision does not change any of the number of units allowed. So it's just a way, once the units are established or proposed, then they can subdivide that and create a unit lot for a particular middle housing type and sell that product. And the question came up on the conformity of the unit lot. And we have some language that is proposed in there. One in particular, and I'll just quote this one out of our density in dimension standards. New lots, excluding unit lots created through a short plat or conventional subdivision process, shall comply with the minimum lot size requirements to achieve density. So it excludes unit lots from the definition of what a lot is that has to meet the minimum lot size. So the parent lot meets the minimum lot size, and then they can subdivide and create a unit lot for the smaller portion. There's also, in the applicability section, a portion of it that relates to it as well. A unit lot subdivision creates a relationship between the parent lot and each unit lot created, allowing for an individual ownership of housing on each unit lot while applying site-specific development standards to the parent lot as a whole. So you apply the development standards to the parent lot as a whole. That would include setbacks and minimum lot sizes. Now, it still doesn't preclude someone from having to meet all the parking requirements that are still required for these units. It doesn't change any of the requirements for access, for utilities, where they might have to create easements for utilities. It just, in the larger picture, it will encourage, hopefully, more for sale product out there of these middle housing unit types, which will sell for less than your traditional single family home would. And that concludes my comments.
Again, I'd like to provide clarification questions from the council. So anyone have any? Okay, I do have a comment. So we're done with the child lot, right? I had to say it. Okay, you don't have to answer. I was just being. So I'm assuming that the infrastructure such as water meters, sewer, or it wouldn't be septic, so it would be sewer, all will be separate and individual to that lot, correct? Before it can be, blessed as a lot.
Correct. It would be the unit lot subdivision process, similar to a short plat process, gets routed to all the utilities for review and requirements for easements and for placement of utilities.
Okay. That's all I have. And anybody else? No. So we'll go on to open public hearing and take comments. So anybody online?
There are no one online, Mayor.
Anybody here that would like to, in the public, that's from the public, that would like to comment? And I don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to council consideration. And I'm calling for a motion to consider the middle housing legislative compliance.
Mayor, I move that we pass an ordinance amending portions of Titles 13, 19, and 21 of the University Place Municipal Code relating to creating more housing options in conformity with recent state legislation.
Mayor Figueroa, I'll second.
Any opposed? I'll go ahead and take a vote, I should say, instead of opposed. My bad. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excuse me? Oh, discussion, yes. You guys are so in agreement, no questions. I just thought it was no discussion. So, okay, tells you that I'm still human. With that, any discussion?
Quick comment.
Oh, no, you can't have it. No, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank your team for putting all this together. I know it's been a lot of work, and I know we're under the deadline from the state for the end of this month to get something passed, or else we have to follow their exact rules. And so I really appreciate the work you and your team have put in to get this done and put something together that we can all agree on. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Worthington, and then Councilmember Grassi.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And then just wanted to say, I know I've had a number of questions about unit lot subdivision. And the concept I can appreciate. The fact is, I think the potential for our unit lot, or for the unit lot as it is created in the state, I think there's a few things that need to be worked out yet, is my guess. But I also recognize that it's not the direct responsibility of the city, nor, in fact, are we likely to have any specific authority as it relates to it. So I don't know that that's anything that hangs me up as a result. It's more about just recognizing that there may be some a learning curve to this for the state and for other jurisdictions, including University Place, as we get to implement that on the ground. Won't be the first time that's happened. Won't be the last. And so we'll move forward with that. In total, though, I believe that this does some positive things to help with affordable housing, and with that, I'm voting for it.
Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with some of the Councilmember Worthington's comments as well. I wanted to thank our team for the hard work and the detailed work that you put into this. And for those watching, this is a lot. It's complex, and it is an evolving new door, but I believe a door to progress. And so I just want to encourage our community, that those that are watching right now, that there's going to be questions as we go down this road, and that our team and our staff is very accessible as people do have questions, especially like Councilmember Worthington had questions on the subdivision. So I just want to remind those that are watching and will watch that we're ready and we're accessible for questions, helping people along the way, figuring out how to do this. But overall, I'm excited about a step forward for affordable housing in our community, and I know that's a priority of everyone on this council. So thank you so much for your hard work.
Councilmember Boykin.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to go on record and say it's a step in the right direction. And any concern or trepidation was eliminated from me from, again, excellent work that the staff had done, and then the way in which it was communicated about anything that could potentially be concerns that I have. You can't hear me? Hear me okay? Okay. My apologies for the microphone.
We didn't turn it on.
Thank you so much. It's good to have good help at all times. Thank you, Henry.
Yes.
So as I was about to say, again, it's just a step in the right direction for a couple of reasons, the way that I see it. The first is when it comes to one of the things that I think is also on people's minds when it comes to family. It's another way to just sort of help looking at options to age in place and to talk about bringing families together in a more economic way. So this is the first opportunity to do something like this. So in that regard, there would be questions, but again, it's a step in the right direction for the right reasons. And I also believe that because that there is an intent to really address affordable housing in ways in which allows the City of University Place to put its own influence and stamp on the things that we have to be responsive to, it's just really good to make sure that we have done that in a way that's prudent and clear for our community. So again, I was quick to say yes, but that's because my yes is really firmly behind it being the best way, in my view, to ensure that it's a step in the right direction and being affirmed, at least by this council member. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll echo Lalia, my fellow council members here, and also I'd like to give a shout out to the Planning Commission and to you, Mr. George, and to you, Mr. Brisky, for all your hard work to fit this square peg into our round hole, which was very difficult. You know, it's not the perfect fit. And so as we march and move along, I hope that it will fit better into our community than what I'm envisioning it to do now. It gives the opportunities on the surface for affordable housing, but I'm waiting for the test of time to see if that actually comes to reality. Because so many visionary items that we put out there, and circling back to real world increases in cost, that increases our property taxes and other taxes, can also be part of the equation for housing affordability to sustain people in an affordable place. So I know we need to do this, and that's the only reason I'll vote for it, but I'm going to take a back seat and see actually what happens and be proactive with our state legislators to tweak it, and hopefully this will sustain affordability in our community with some of the tweaking that goes forward, because I don't see that happening in the next 10 or so years under this criteria that we're mandated to do. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree. I will hold my breath until I see something. So that's my only comments on that. Okay, so let's take a vote. And on this one, I think I'll have the city clerk take an official roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Boykin?
Yes.
Councilmember Worthington?
Yes.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Yes.
Councilmember Grassi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood?
Aye.
And Mayor Figueroa.
Aye.
Mayor, vote resolved 6 ayes.
Thank you. We'll move on to, thank you, Mr. Brisky and Mr. George. Appreciate it. And we'll move on to item number 9, City Manager and Council Comments and Reports. And we'll start with our City Manager, Mr. Sugg.
One item, Mayor and Council. As you know, the Inclusive Playground has been open for about a month. It's a tremendous success. It's become a destination for a lot of folks. Anytime I drive by there, there's always a number of people using it and enjoying the facility. We still have a little bit more work to do. We're going to be pouring some sidewalk. And the staff is targeting mid-July for a ribbon cutting, so we'll keep you posted on that. We just couldn't squeeze it in June with AWC conference coming up and a number of other things. So we're looking at mid-July. and we're looking for a clear date when hopefully we can get the maximum attendance at that ribbon cutting. So that's my report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start to the left, Mr. Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief report tonight. Wanted to just affirm that it was also an honor and privilege, as always, to be part of the JBLM Memorial Day ceremony on Memorial Day, and obviously in honor of those who were paying the ultimate price in defense of our freedom. Also was really appreciative about the expectation of the things that are on the horizon, certainly for this weekend. One of those things, the incomparable Duck Days. I'm not going to say any more about that because incomparable, I believe, says enough. The other thing I wanted to call out is the opportunity for the celebration of the 10th year of really recognizing our volunteers behind the anniversary of our wonderful golf event. And so in that regard, just excited about what's around the corner as the expectation of joy and pain in the last 7 days, if you will, is permanently on my mind. So just appreciative of that at all times. That's all my remarks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks again for allowing me to share.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week I went to a refresher course on land use training that was given by our insurance provider, the WACA, something like that. Thank you. And so it was interesting. The gentleman that presented was extremely intelligent, and I thought his presentation was very good. And it kind of reminded me of how much I already do know, and also looking forward to having another training to taking a deeper dive into, if you're a council member for a longevity of time, maybe they can have a training for that as well, because there's a lot of changes that had gone on in land use, but that really wasn't touched or covered in that genre anyway. But it was good. Pierce County, I went to their urban trees presentation that they had. The first half was for elected officials. The second half was for staff. You know, Lisa Patoric was there, as was Kenneth George, and I think that's okay. And so it talked about the benefits and issues and resolutions to create an urban forest within an urban environment. Lakewood, Gig Harbor, and University Place pinched hit to give out presentations to the group in breakout sessions to talk about their tree ordinances and compliances with the upcoming state mandate, House Bill 1181, so that because we need to redefine and also reinvent our tree policy according to the House bill in size, species, conditions, maintenance, budget line items, and also funding. And the entities that were together, they were encouraged and I think on board with being collaborative, so that University Place, we're not quite there with our tree policy as Gig Harbor and Lakewood are at this point in time, but I think we can glean some of the things that they have already done to see what we could tweak and create for the benefit of University Place. Went to an Up for Art meeting as well. They're so excited about more concerts in the atrium. They are on fire with enthusiasm. So they're talking about 4 additional concerts, and they're just in the planning stages right now. So September, November, February, and April will be, so they're taking it easy and slow with a brand new board. They're creating a new vision for Up for Art, and so we will see what they figure out, and in September, I believe, we'll have a discussion for a art commission in University Place, which the way Up for Art is going is not going to be designed how maybe we would like it to be, or our interests are. But we'll see after our council discussion how all that pans out. And I'm going to be at Duck Days this Saturday for family fun. I'll be in a golf cart with red, white, and blue, and I know some other council members are going to be in a golf cart as well, maybe honking some ducky horns, and they'll be all pretty ducky and decked out. So hopefully I'll see you on the sidelines and I get to wave to all of you. Starts at 10 and it goes until the last parader exits it, and then we have our free hot dogs at our fire station, and also city booths will be out there talking about things that are happening in the city, as well as the 30th celebration extravaganza that's happening in August. So with that, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. So a few comments. A couple weeks ago, I was able to represent the city at the South Sound Military Communities Partnership breakfast meeting. We had General McFarland, who's the Corps Commander out at JBLM, was the guest speaker, and it was great to hear him just kind of get his thoughts on where we are going as a community and as a nation right now. He talked quite a bit about Army transformation initiatives and some other things that are going on. They also, and in general, the discussion continued, talked about housing again. They're really trying to find affordable housing for service members and their families, because right now a lot of them have to commute a very long way to find housing that they can actually afford, even with their housing allowances. And about 70% of the soldiers on JBLM live off-post, so that's a significant issue, and they're looking at all sorts of possible solutions. Childcare, again, is also an issue, same reasons. It's hard to find and expensive. There is going to be some major projects for the region, not for UP, but for region, where funding has been temporarily or curtailed due to changes in federal government grants and funding processes right now. Fortunately, some major projects aren't dead yet. They're just kind of getting, life support funding to keep them going for a few more years, and then hopefully see if they can get the funding back to finish these projects. And they also took time out to honor the Lakewood City Manager, John Caulfield, who is retiring after, actually I'm not sure how many years, but quite a few. And I just thought it was interesting, because I didn't know this until I talked to him after the meeting, is that he was also a member of 275 Rangers, along with General McFarland and along with myself, different times, but it was really cool just to hear him talk to him about that. So that concludes that for that meeting. I got to drive by the inclusive playground the other day, and middle of the afternoon, there's probably 30, 40 kids out there running around. It was just awesome. Love seeing it. And other than that, I'll see you all at Duck Days.
Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things to make it pretty brief. As it happens, I won't be participating at Duck Days, but I wish my fellow council members have a great time. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. It's always been grand. And for the community, too, it's a special day, so I'll be sorry to miss the occasion. I will be attending the AWC conference. It'll be probably I would think it will be my last conference as a council member in terms of the Association of Washington Cities. So since I have no election plans in the future, this is going to be it. I'm a little late to file for this year. So so I think my career of elected officialhood is the writings on the wall. And all. So we'll work with all of that. But I was going to mention that I was contacted AWC and I was asked to be on a two-person panel. So I'll be on a two-person panel on Wednesday morning talking about the difference in perspectives in local government, from working from the staff to a manager to an elected official. There's a couple of us that have been through that process, and so the other person happens to be a Steve. It's a very, very good name. But Steve and I will discuss that a bit and share our thoughts. And anyhow, I'm looking forward to that opportunity. And I was also going to make my apologies now, because while the AWC conference, while there, Jill and I will be celebrating our 49th wedding anniversary on the 26th. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break to recognize our 49th anniversary. And so, but I'll be there for a portion of that day, but maybe not there for the evening. I think Jill and I will do something else for dinner. So, but that's just wanted to share those thoughts, and yeah, all set. But thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Grassley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to say a shout out to Kennewick because they're getting quite the plug to be a romantic destination city for anniversary celebration. My goodness. So Kennewick is coming up. That's exciting. We'll look forward to that. Thank you. I want to first welcome 2 new residents to University Place that I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday. They just moved to University Place, and I invited them to watch. So hopefully they are Christian and Sophia. But Christian is serving in our armed forces and was just stationed here and is loving University Place. So I want to welcome them to our community. Love it when we get to host service members in our city. It's just an honor. So thank you for moving here. Thank you for all that you do. I also want to say a special thank you again to our residents that have been so patient with our construction activity. Every day I drive and I see all of our hardworking teams out there, and I also see all of the people that are patient backing out of their driveways and people. So thank you for your patience. Progress is coming and happening, but I know that it is not without some extra gray hairs that may have been formed during this construction project. So thank you to all of our residents for their patience. I also enjoyed our commissioners' luncheon. Thank you to our city staff and mayor for leading that. That was wonderful to get to recognize and thank our commissioners. For those that couldn't attend due to the work day or during the day, just want to say thank you to our commissioners. Work so hard and provide invaluable work, and our city staff leads and a liaison to each of those commissions, and I want to thank you for the work that you do. And finally, Duck Days as well. I'm looking forward to it. I think I might be the only one here that's participated in every Duck Days that we've had. I don't know. I was out there pretty young. But I'm looking forward to it. My children are looking forward to it. And I want to thank all the businesses and those community groups that have signed up to participate. I encourage you to be a part of your community. This is a great way to meet your neighbors, to come out and enjoy. The weather looks like it's going to be a great day. So thank you to our hard-working teams that are making that a great, safe activity and memory for our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's hard when you're the last one because I don't like repeating anybody else's comments, but I do have a good one here. I was shopping at Trader Joe's today, and I ran into Tony. Everybody knows Tony from Trader Joe's, and he says, Javier, how many you gonna be at the Duck Days? Yes. And he says, well, guess how many lollipops we passed out last time? Trader Joe's lollipops. So I'm going to try to see if anyone here, start with you, how many do you think they pass out?
2,500.
3,126.
I'll say 2,000.
I'll say 3,889.
I'm going to go with 4,000. Even better answer, all they had.
Well, Mr. Boykin hit it right in the nail. 4,000 lollipops. He says, I think that, it grows every year. We probably surpass 4,000. I said, and he says, that's a lot of boxes of lollipops that we pass out. So anyway, that's my report. Okay, so we will move on to we're moving on to the study session. And item number 10 is the council rules procedure amendments. And this is the second study for an adoption of a resolution. And Mr. Kaser, our city attorney, will lead us into that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And lest it be not overlooked, I think it's our third attempt at a second study on this.
Yes.
Just to reorient the council, because it has been a while since we last talked about this, back in our January retreat. In our January retreat, one of the annual things that we frequently talk about is council rules of procedure. At the time of the January retreat, council had preliminarily identified 7 general areas that it wanted to talk about in the great rules umbrella, ranging from council agendas to proclamations and recognition, appointment of advisory commissions, and the Finance Committee, with the overall aim, how can we improve, how can we streamline, and how can we make our processes more efficient. Of those 7 items, we identified 4 that warranted further action. And I'll talk about those in a second. But I think before I talk about the 4 that warrant further action, I think it's also just kind of important both to recall for council as well as for the community that simply because it doesn't warrant further action doesn't mean that headway still isn't made on those items. Council may recall among the items that we discussed were how do we handle presentations? You know, to what extent, do you get on for presentations? Should they be at the beginning of the meeting? Do we involve questions and answers? Those sort of things. And council had a thorough and robust discussion about that towards making sure that that process was more inclusive. Appointment on the advisory commissions. Do we interview folks, not interview folks? And council recognized that there wasn't a need for any code changes. But again, part of the discussion recognizes we had that discussion and ideas to move forward. Of the items that council did wish to take forward, we recognized that there were probably 4 items that warranted change. Of the 4, I would say 3 are probably low-hanging fruit, at least from where I sit. Council may have a different read on this. 1 probably warrants significant additional discussion. So let me talk about the easier part first. Council had identified that in our agenda process, getting items on the agenda, this number 1, getting items on the agenda, there was a couple conflicting rules in terms of how do we get items on the agenda. Historically, and this is still our current process because council has not acted on the rule change, to get an item on the agenda, there's 4 ways to get the item on the agenda. The city manager can do it, the mayor can do it, 2 council members can prepare a legislative proposal, or that there's a general consensus is recognized by the mayor. There's a couple conflicting rules that are out there that kind of put things a little bit at odds. So council had recognized, well, maybe something isn't quite legislative, but we still want to talk about it. So the idea was come up with some rule amendments, and those are outlined further in the packet. I can talk about them more in detail, but they're outlined further in the packet to sort of harmonize those rules. Part of that process also recognizes that one part of our other process is potential for change. Historically, to get an item on the agenda for a legislative proposal, there's a standard legislative proposal form. The idea was to streamline the legislative proposal form. We called it, let me just make sure I'm calling it the right thing because it went through a couple different iterations, an agenda proposal / request form. It's very bureaucratic sounding. If council's got a better name for it, it's your process. We're happy to make the appropriate change. The one thing I do want to call attention to on that proposed change is right up front in the very tippy top box. We identified the nature of the request so it's clear and unambiguous right out of the gate. What is it that the asker is seeking? Is it legislation? Is it something you just want to talk about as part of a recognized idea on the agenda? Is it a proclamation or recognition, which we'll talk about probably a little bit more in depth throughout the course of the night? Or is it something else? So the idea is let's get the idea identified up front so there's no ambiguity in where are we going with this. The second is sort of I don't want to call it a nitpick, but it is a minor process in terms of how we handle our meeting end time. I think as council as well as the community knows, our meetings typically are scheduled through 9 o'clock. Our current rule says that anybody at 8:30 can ask for a point of order and say, hey, I don't think we're going to meet the 9 o'clock. Can we have an extension? We have not held ourselves to that standard at 8:30, where somebody's been looking at the clock and saying, we probably need a point of order. Our typical practice is somewhere between 8:45 and more realistically 8:55, 8:57, or somewhere we say, hey, we think we probably need to have some additional time. It's a minor rule change, changing an at to an after 8:30 to conform with what historically has been our practice. For meeting extensions and all of and so the idea is it conforms to the practice. It doesn't reflect a new practice. The third is the elimination of the Finance Committee. This is something that council had discussed at the retreat. The Finance Committee, I think, as council knows, historically meets quarterly, chaired under our current rules by the Mayor Pro Tem, where the finances are generally discussed. Council had recognized, hey, we can do this during a regular council meeting. We can schedule it on a quarterly basis in much the same way. We can go over our finances. We can do it in a study session just like what we're doing right now with the rule change provides greater transparency to the budget and so forth. And council expressed general amenability to that. So appropriate rule changes are made throughout the packet, and I'm not going to go talk about which part we struck through and interlineated and the like. Those are what I would categorize as the lower hanging fruit. The harder fruit that council had requested additional time on would be the idea of recognitions and proclamations. And this is something that council has discussed throughout the course of this year. How do we recognize, how do we call attention to matters within the community that warrant attention by council? There are a wide range of approaches to this. Our rule, when you actually look at our rule, is pretty bland. That's probably the legal phrase for it. It's just recognized as an official announcement made by the mayor or the city council. And it goes on to say it's made for the purpose of recognition of an individual group or event, and that we publicly read them. That's it. That's our rule. There's no standards behind that. The standards are historically what council wants the standards to be. To that end, council had requested some follow-up be done. What are our neighbors doing? What are other jurisdictions doing? What sort of process, what sort of flow do those have? To that end, you'll see in the packet I pulled, not entirely at random, but some of our neighboring jurisdictions that touch our borders and others within the county. You'll find that there is a range of processes in there. Some are equally as concise as ours. Some have more extended processes. At the end of the day, the thing that I'd ask council to bear in mind is these are your rules. These are your processes. Where does council wish to fit within this? As you're looking at this and going through the discussion, I think there's a couple of points, and these are points, at least from the staff perspective, we've identified at least to help frame and kick off the debate for council. Obviously, how council wishes to proceed, or you may identify other different parts of this. But a couple of different things just to sort of kick off is the initial question of who makes the initial decision on a proclamation request. When we've done proclamations in the past, a request would come in and it might be done simply, with a recommendation at the staff level, might be done, through the mayor and the mayor pro tem. Historically, they haven't risen to the full council. Most of the time, if you look back on our history of proclamations, they've been generally non-controversial. To what extent would council want a role in that? Is this also similarly one where council says, do we want to get to yes at the earliest possible opportunity? Or is it one that all 7 of you would like to say, hey, I think we'd like to have a touch on this? That's a discussion point I think worth worth considering. And there's a couple rules that you'll see throughout there that encourage different philosophies in there. We included in there, for example, the Tacoma rules of procedures, which has that yes at the earliest possible opportunity approach. The form of recognition in there. There are some jurisdictions that do a council proclamation. There are some that do a mayoral proclamation. I note in the materials, and I think you may have seen in the rules, that the city of Puyallup has like 5 different tiers of recognition, culminating with the keys to the city. I'm not sure we're ready for that, but obviously council can make that decision if we're at the point where we're ready to start handing out keys to the city in there. But at the end of the day, the issue is that one where you simply want to have it recognized by council. One thing I have seen from one of the other jurisdictions, I saw this in a community event that I was at in Tacoma just the other day, where it was a council member from the city of Tacoma who did the event and said, where I, council member of the city of Tacoma, proclaim on behalf of the city council of Tacoma and the mayor and so forth that today is National Such and Such Day. I don't know if this council was to go down that approach, but just recognize that there are different approaches to that. There's public and other forums. We historically do our proclamations here in public in a council meeting setting, which is fine. Sometimes those can be recognized. If there's a proclamation you want to do at a separate site event where it's out particularly in a field or at a business location or at a particular community event, I would suspect that council may wish to do it in those circumstances, but that's, again, a council discussion. And then at what standards? I think that's probably the harder one. What triggers a proclamation? When is something proclamation worthy? When is something not proclamation worthy? And I think you've got some standards from other jurisdictions. A lot of them are there's an inherent component to this that is subjective. I can't objectify in a rule subjective stuff. But I think each of you have general sense of where something is proclamation worthy or not. So those are initial staff commentary. I am happy to answer additional questions. I can provide additional samples just even on proclamations that some of your other colleagues are doing this week in their council meetings and the like. But with that, I will turn it back to council because I know council probably is itching to discuss this probably more than you're interested in hearing from me. So with that, I'll turn it back to council.
Thank you. And I think that we definitely want to hear from you because we need options and what's been going on. I'd like to suggest that we start, because there's quite a few items that we need to discuss. We can't do them all at one time. I think that would be complicated, complex. I'd like to suggest we start with the first one, and we just discuss it through. You know, what the city attorney said, clarify, question, debate, discuss, and then hopefully have some direction we can provide just on that one item, and then move on to the next item and to the point that we finish. To me, that's the only process I can see that would make sense. Anyone have a better process? Okay, so that being said, let's start with the first one, and introduce the title, and then we'll go with, again, briefly with your recommendations. You gave a lot of information. That was a great summary to where we're heading to, but I think if we should start with the first one, and then I'm sure the council will start engaging.
Yeah, so the first question I would suggest is to answer who makes the initial decision. And you do have a couple of options at your disposal. I'll outline some of these options. They aren't necessarily all-inclusive, and I think as council's discussing, you may find other options. There is the get to yes at the earliest possible opportunity option. I don't have a better shorthand for that. So request comes in the door. That would typically be probably at the agenda setting process where it would be, either at the mayor pro tem level that says, yeah, this proclamation makes sense. We'll go ahead, stick it on an agenda. If there is doubt about that process, the mayor and the mayor pro tem would refer to the full council for discussion. So door number one. Door number two, request comes in. The mayor would just simply say, hey, we have this request, or mayor pro tem would say, we have this request for a proclamation. Council, what say you? Is this proclamation worthy? If it appears that it has council consensus, it gets put on a subsequent agenda. I'm sure there's probably a 3 or a 4 in there, but those are probably what I would suggest is probably, if I'm looking at it on a spectrum, the two outlined spectrum options.
I'd like to start and provide you why I even added this to this council policies and procedures, because, and I think I said it at the retreat, I was very uncomfortable in just signing off on some of these proclamations that, it's just representing this whole council, this whole city actually. And some of them, they didn't have a precedence. To me, if something had a precedence from the national level, the federal government, where the president proclaims something, and it goes down to the state, and the state, even without the national, there's a precedent there where the governor said, proclaim this. I feel that that's a good precedent by which we can say this is, somewhere to go. I am leery and don't feel comfortable just because somebody got some city council somewhere in Timbuktu saying that, proclaims their issue or their agenda that we should follow. And that has happened quite a few times. Well, so-and-so city proclaimed this, and so you should too. And so it got really uncomfortable for me, and especially when some of them were specific, but yet there's other national, or if not state, proclamations that are more generic, covering more area. and more people than just one set of group of certain culture. So from there, I'd like to introduce that we look at as a precedent if it's been nationally, it's been statewide, and to maybe even the county, but I would say at least state and nationally, that if that is something that we should just follow through and proclaim as well. Or at least, I don't know if we can, I have a hard time, to me, proclamations should be worthy. And that's a good word to use. Is it worthy? Because all we're doing is acknowledging what else has already been proclaimed. We can't proclaim when somebody already higher than us proclaimed it. That's just my thoughts and feelings. But to acknowledge that proclamation, and I think we just need to really take a look, what are we really doing? Are we really proclaiming, or are we just acknowledging and recognizing someone else's proclamation? So I'd like to just introduce those thoughts, and we'll go from there. Councilmember Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. So appreciate you framing the question, and also our city attorney framing up a portion of it too, as to approach A or approach B. If it's clear that this is something we want to do, there doesn't seem to be doubt, we proceed with it. If there is doubt, it gets referred to council. I was curious as to what that refer to council process looks like, though. Is that somehow the council doing a formal vote? Is it a discussion in one-on-one meetings that presents some consensus?
What I would say is, under council comments, the mayor would say, hey, we received a proclamation request for, and I have a master calendar for like everything that's June. So I could tell you, according to this, I've been told that June is National Pollinators Month. NationalCalendarDay.com, National Pollinators Month. So if we receive a request for National Pollinators proclamation, mayor would say, hey, we got this request for National Pollinators Month. Do we want to do a proclamation on it? What say you guys? If there's enough head nods that say, let's do it, the bees get their proclamation.
But you would ask that question in what format?
I would ask that question under council comment.
So in a regular meeting?
In a regular meeting.
We would say, this is a secondary item. The world is not going to change one way or the other. But council, should we do a proclamation of pollinators?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and then back to the mayor's similar comments. Then, so other cities I've worked in and when I was mayor, and we talked about this then, by the way, we had a standard here and in the other cities that for a proclamation to be done, with only rare exceptions, that someone needed to receive it in person. And so when you get the letter from New York from Sam Tutlil, who collects proclamations every year from every single jurisdiction he can, or his wife Sally can, we just, Sam, you're going to be here. No, we're not doing it. And we're done. There's a threshold, a couple of threshold issues makes 90% of these things go away. Then we're down to what are the ones that matter. And when we have someone in the room to receive it, that helps to show its importance. I said there's exceptions, and there's one annual proclamation we have a contractual obligation to do, which has to do with Arbor Day. We need to do an Arbor Day proclamation. It's part of our duties to be a tree city. And so we usually present that to ourselves, and that works just fine. But I just want to note there's a couple of little oddball things like that. We know what they are if we think hard. And so that would be one. And then I guess, so the idea, if there's a doubt, I can appreciate that. I don't know that much of this actually, in my perspective, if we put a couple of criteria in the front end, be present for one, these things tend to go away, some of them. We still end up with I have a 49th anniversary. Did I mention that? I have a 49th anniversary. What if I'd like to have us...
We proclaim it.
Yeah.
Kennewick will.
Yeah, come in. Do a proclamation here, and I'll be here for it. So...
I have one ready for you, sir.
So I use that as a way not to point fingers at anyone but me. That might be a little too self-serving for folks. And so... but it's an important event. It's a life event for some of us. It's for someone else. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to balance, for us to think about how to balance that sort of thing from those requests. So if there's doubt, though, the suggestion of A is one that gets my attention. Running it in all cases to full council, there are a lot of these things that just aren't going to warrant our time. As much as I love pollinators, that might be one of them. And I think the being present and maybe some other things may be part of it. So, Mayor, in thinking about your thoughts as well, and I think this addresses some of that to take some of it away. So, you don't have to make a subjective judgment every time. Ultimately, it's going to be subjective, but it'll cut through some of these items. A place to start, in my mind.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. I like the direction Councilmember Worthington is going on his thought tracks, and I also understand the mayor's perplexity when it comes to being the sole person to decide, because some of these are really big issues, and obviously there's a lot of proclamations out there. We can have several every day if we wanted to, or more. And nationally, things are being proclaimed. But as a city council, looking at our city's values and seeing what proclamations may we not are no-brainers. We're going to do it pretty much every year. Like Martin Luther King Day, Veterans Day, some of those things. Do we want to proclaim our city's anniversary every year? Maybe not. Maybe every 5th year. We could do that. That would make a little more sense. But as a council coming together and saying, what are our standards, proclamations that we know we're going to do? Every year, we're going to do these. Not a whole lot. Not saying let's make a list of 30, but let's get it down to a reasonable number of 5 or 6 or something. That our city clerk, Emmy, could say, okay, here we go. It's time for this. Oh, it's the Arbor Day one. Let's do this, and let's include in the Arbor Day one Earth Day. Make it 2 in 1. Do some things like that. I also like with a format for an outside request. So if I'm a sitting council member and I am in the community and someone says, oh, we like you to proclaim this, you can direct them to the form. They can fill it out, fill out the reasons why and how it fits in with our city's vision, and then it comes up to the agenda setting team, the mayor pro tem. And sometimes you think, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, let's do it. And other times you're like going, oh, well, let's see what the council as a whole says. Shoot that out prior to a council meeting. Let the council members review it, chew on it, and then at the meeting you can get your consensus for it. But but coming into a meeting cold turkey and saying, hey, what about the pollinator one? I love bees. Bees are important. Bees sustain our life. I'm going to say, yeah, let's do it. Because I don't have the time to really circle around and research it and how that actually really truly dovetails into it. Because when we do a proclamation, it needs to be really important. It just can't be some feel-good thing. It has to have some sense of elevation that it is publicly acknowledged at a city legislative level. So it's something really special and really important. And it also really significantly ties our values and our goals, where we've been, where we're going, like the UP Historical Society, 25 years. That would be worthy of a proclamation. Something like that. Because that certainly ties into our goals, ties into our Growth Management Act, and it is something citywide that is worthy to proclaim. Not a small collective group, but citywide. think of the old town crier, proclaiming it to the whole city. Is it of that importance? Is it of that significance? The inside side one, I like that as well, because it will make the council members and the second party that sign off on it to really think about all those things that I just mentioned. And then it will have a process instead of what I usually do. I go, hey, Mayor, let's do this. You know, and I'm really excited about it. I really want it, you know. And he's like, well, let me think about this. I go, there's nothing to think about. It's a no-brainer. Do it. So if you have a second council member as a party to it, then it becomes even more significant because we have two council members' heads looking at this, and then it could come before the council, and hopefully a really sweet, you know, not no-brainer, you know, we do it. Put it on the consent. We pull it off the consent. I don't know if it's warrants a full study session, but maybe it does. But I'm kind of on the fence with that thought right now. So I'll rest my thoughts right now and hear what my colleagues have to say as well. Thank you.
Just before I move on to the next member, I'd like to just point out, because I really am interested to know, is there a definition that if it's already been proclaimed, do we do another proclamation after it's been proclaimed, or do we recognize that proclamation or not? I mean, I'd like to have some distinction on that whole process.
I'm following you totally.
Well, because, for example, there's already national and state proclamations, and then we're asked to do another proclamation because it's at the state level or national level, and I'm saying, well, it's already been proclaimed. Why do we have to proclaim? The state proclaimed it for the entire state, it's just nationally. So I'm just trying to get a real definition, because I think that we should recognize it publicly that this proclamation has been, you know, set by our governor or by our president, and we should just announce it to, like you said, the town crier. You know, we said, you know, we recognize this day here, so we have to proclaim it. So. I'd just like for everybody to just chime in, because I really I think we're all going to have, I have problems with that. I'm going to question it every time unless we decide on that. So if I may, I'm going to go back to Mr. Worthington and you to kind of just comment, because I think it's really important.
Sure, just on that, from my perspective, I don't see a specific need for us to echo a national, state, or state proclamation, unless there's something about the significance of that for University Place. So if the governor proclaims it's National Apple Month, that's wonderful. Now, if a University Place person happens to be selected as the National Apple Month king, hey, we might want to go, it's National Apple Month, and our person's the king. So I use that as one way to illustrate that. I also wanted to interject, when I was mayor, there was one time that I can think of that I did a proclamation, and I talked to staff about this, and I reported it to council, outside of the council office. And it was because we had the Philippine consulate establish a local office in UP for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whichever, but the consulate general had sent a delegation here to help process and greet Filipino citizens, help them with passport issues and travel and a variety of things. And so it was asking too much for that delegation to come here for proclamation. I was invited to welcome them, and I thought, well, on behalf of the city, we'll welcome them with a proclamation for the Consul General, who wasn't there, but I used his name and presented it to the Deputy General Consulate, whatever it was. But there are things like that came up. And in the moment, without other procedures in place, that's how we dealt with it. But there are things that will happen like that.
Yeah. Well, I concur along your thought lines as well. Not all national or state proclamations need to be or should be proclaimed by the city of University Place. We need to vet them according to some of the things where we outlined in the thought processes as well. You know, like National Ice Cream Month, right? We have Bliss Ice Cream, but Bliss didn't, you know, do a proclamation. We know it's National Ice Cream Month, so probably not. We'll move past that. But then next year, Bliss will say, oh, we would like you to proclaim it. So they write down their form, and we look at it, we give it a head nod or not, and then we can do it. I think some of the things that really are salient within our city, it doesn't have to be national or state significance, but they can be city significance. And certainly there's ice cream sold throughout the city. People love their ice cream, and that could be a fun way to interject, a little bit of lightness into our council as well. So we can always ask Bliss, to give us a sample too. But anyway, so that's what I'm thinking. Thanks.
Councilmember Grassian, thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to concur with Councilmember McCluskey's thoughts on that version of state proclamations, National Ice Cream, when it does a UP-centric, something that comes up like that, perhaps, that highlights a local business. I'm prepared to support that as well. I just want to back up as far as when we're talking about proclamations, what that really means. From my perspective, it's giving honor to something as a city. And what do we want to honor? There are some things, I think, at the national level or at the state level that do warrant additional honor. Just because our state recognizes Martin Luther King Day, for example, I wouldn't want to take a pass on that as a city and not honor it because I believe that would be a misstep in my perspective of our city. We have to look at things that honor those in our city, our community. When we miss honor, I think it's a misstep, in my opinion, by this council. So I don't know, as far as being present for and that's one example when you're going to, be present to receive something. Who would be present? Who would receive that in that state? Who would we give that to? So I think there's, your ideas warrant that as well. I like the idea of being present, but there are some national holidays and different things that I don't know who we would identify. I love highlighting people in our community, of course. I love bringing people into chambers as well. I like the idea of having a yearly calendar, a year that we go over at maybe once a year at our retreat in January, where we say, this is what we did last year. Do we want to move forward? Is there anything we want to add? Is there anything we want to delete, and decide there to get some of those benchmarks, as Councilmember McCluskey said, maybe those 6 or 7 that we know we always do. And then we can add from there. But I do think it's hard for one person to decide who's worthy, define what is worthy. I like the idea of having for the inside perspective, having 2 council members weighted and bringing that forward. I think it's a little hard to come up to the dais and be unprepared and hear an idea here for the first time. And I like the idea of always tying it back to our city values as well, and our council goals. Those might evolve from quarter to quarter, year to year with our council goals, what we want to say and highlight and proclaim and really give honor to. And I think as I'm thinking through this process, outside of just the word proclaim, what do we want to give our city? What do we want to show honor to? And that, in my mind, streamlines a lot of different things as well. So, and it also gives me the opportunity to say, I don't want to miss it. I don't want us to get in the business of proclamations and have really important days on our calendar and miss them as a city, because I think what we fail to honor, we lose. And that says just as much as, proclaiming it as well. At the same time, if everything's important, nothing is important. So it's a great opportunity for us to be very cautious and thoughtful, but it's also an easy way to highlight our community. So thank you.
Thank you. And I don't, Mr. Boykin, did you want to have any? Oh, excuse me. Oh, you were on there. My bad. So Mayor Pro Tem Wood.
And yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So I don't know how Councilmember Grassi did it from way over there, but she's reading my notes. No, I agree with a lot of what she had to say over there. I like the annual approach for getting at least some of those identified up front. I also agree something like Martin Luther King Day, things like that, we should, I think, take the time as a city to proclaim. A couple things she couldn't see from over there.
I tried.
Yeah. I would like us to think about, and I don't even know, I don't have a strong feeling about this one way or the other, to look at the difference between a proclamation versus a recognition. Because the idea behind a proclamation for me seems like it's a statement of citywide support or intent. Martin Luther King Day, something like that. Mm-hmm. We proclaim as a city, this fits with our values. And then have something for a recognition of, say, achievement. So that when we have a business that reaches its 25th year anniversary, but we've got 8 of those businesses up and down Bridgeport, we can recognize the one that's achieved the 25th year anniversary without proclaiming that it's the best business of its 8 competitors on Bridgeport. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to kind of, and again, it'd be a little subjective, as always, which ones are a proclamation versus a recognition. But I think if we have that kind of rule, that gets us out of playing favorites among our community. I think we absolutely should recognize business members in our community and citizens of our community who do great things or reach a milestone. I think that's wonderful. But I also don't want to do that to the exclusion of other people who have done similar types of things over the years. And actually, I like the application process for it. If they fill it out and say, I want to do this, then that's takes the onus off the city for determining which businesses have hit 25 years. But if they want that recognition, we can do that. So that'd be my thought process, and I think that covers my current notes. Thank you.
Before I move on to the next member, thank you for that, because I'll give you an example of that, and that was, many of you were there, the Trader Joe's 25th anniversary. It started with a request from Tony for a proclamation, but he didn't know any better. I mean, that's our business, but I just went ahead and talked to him and changed it to a recognition, and that's what the certificate was, recognition certificate, which they have it hung up at the store. So that was an example there where I just didn't feel comfortable, but we didn't have any rules, and those the little things like that prompt me it's time to have a conversation. So yes, you're absolutely right. Mr. Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am just appreciative of having the conversation, and there are really clear ideas to me just based upon having a discussion in real time. What has to me been clear about one word in particular, the subjectivity. I think that if you look and listen to what the comments have been thus far, we have actually heard a range of different things around proclamation, recognition, and good, bad, or indifferent. What we believe rises to the occasion of what makes it so. Whether it's a worthiness, whether it's an honor, the subjectivity about the possibility of making sure we avoid, for example, unintendedly playing favorites among our residents, or whether or not it can't be a feel-good thing, whether it's a situation where we're after the expectation of just making sure that we have it down to the proclamations that matter. Whether we talk about introducing the possibility of the process with the expectation of who makes the initial decision, which it infers there's a final decision. But if it's a decision, I don't really know where we go. So for me, it is extremely important not to have anybody's subjectivity removed from the process, any more than it's just as important to ensure that everybody's subjectivity can be entered into the process. So the respect for the process is really what I'm after, and the transparency in that. For example, if we're just going to have one person or two people decide whether or not it moves forward, it negates the expectation of 5 other people being able to weigh in. And in the same sense, if we want to be sure that it's important enough for us to move on it, no matter how it came into our space, in my view, this is one of the responsibilities of us actively governing. It is absolutely one of the privileges of being able to take a look at something that may have come up from community, have a process that's transparent and a full respect for it before it is moved away unintentionally. I say unintentionally because if we don't have a full vetting, and specifically a comment was we need to vet them, the process that we should put in place that's transparent and clear and allowing for the subjectivity is the only thing I'm after, because I think that it really is a privilege to look at each and every opportunity, because someone's particular idea that for them rises to the occasion of a proclamation consideration might be important for the city. But if we don't get an opportunity to flush it out because we don't have a clear process that allows for it to get in front of all of council, I think we do ourselves a disservice. And unintentionally, I think we do a disservice to our community. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
So, thank you. And before we move on for a second round of comments, I'd like to just, on that note, Mr. Boykin, the only way to do that, and that's a very respectful process, is to do a study session. You know, somebody says, other than those that we vote on that are just, okay, we're going to do this every year because it honors certain things in life. And we can vote on that, and it's done. But anything that comes in out of the blue from anybody or even council members, then we should probably put it in, I'm just talking here, it's just brainstorming, put it into a simple legislative, somebody comes to us as a council member, that's probably what's going to happen. Most people are not going to leave, how do I request a proclamation and go into the website and figure out if there is a request for that, but they're going to probably call one of us. And we can direct them to that request, or we can just say on their behalf, to make it easy, I'll make a request for you and I'll find another council member to do so. If you can't find one, then you probably have to report and say, I couldn't find another one, and so be it, right? But that's usually I've never seen anyone not be able to get a second member to sign off. And then it just gets on the agenda and discuss it. I think something like that can be discussed in one study session. This is not a 2 or 3 study session. And hopefully it'd be like, 45, 30-minute discussion, or even much, much less. I think that gives everybody a chance to weigh in, and it could be a very quick one. But I think, it does require, because we all have different ideas, and we need to say why not in front. So otherwise, it gets political, it gets personal emotions in it, and I think that it sometimes, for me, it's always nice to hear everybody's opinion. That makes a big difference for me in making decisions. So I just wanted to put that out. So, Mr. Worthington.
Thank you. In terms of round 2?
Yes, this is round 2.
All right. Councilmember Boykin, thank you for your comments. So I think that really helped shed, for me, more light on why what I think the city attorney, or at least what I'm referring to as process B, which is the full council review, does carry some good weight and is a valuable tool. I'm trying still to temper it a little bit because it's more about process also. And all the council could be involved, or perhaps, as you say, should be involved. The challenge will be when we have an emerging issue that is the recipient is going to be here Tuesday and it's Friday, or be here on Monday, regardless of the details. The point is, it has to happen quickly, and someone needs to sort through it in a rapid manner as possible. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. But what does happen often is there can be a lot of requests. And if we take each one through a study session, that's going to consume, even at 5 and 10 minutes a discussion of each, which is 2 minutes each. It's going to chew a lot of time when we on that. And so I was trying to figure out if there's another process that allows for full council access and comment, but doesn't take it into the formality of a meeting and all. And that might be in the one-on-ones, or it may be in some. Maybe there's another method, and maybe I'm seeing it wrong. But my sense is there can be a lot of these, and some will have urgency to them. Yeah. So how do we deal with that?
And Ms. Grassi, thank you for your patience again. I promise I'll get back to you, but it does go with Mr. Boykin's opinion. And I think this discussion, just to kind of have a little closure in there. So, Mr. Boykin.
I appreciate it, Mayor, and my apology, Councilmember Grassi. But I do want to take advantage of the opportunity to just be timely, because my goal is only one. I want to make sure that there is an opportunity for there to be clarity of an idea coming to the forefront, that it doesn't unintendedly get removed or dismissed before it has had an opportunity to be reviewed or vetted. I don't think it needs to rise to the level each time that comes before us to be a legislative proposal. I think there's even been comments that we don't even necessarily see this as legislative in nature oftentimes. But what I am most interested in is that we have an opportunity to hear, for example, what may have come from a different council member. The origin may be important, the actual content may be important, and just having the opportunity to take a review of it may be something that is extremely important to the city as a whole. It may absolutely be even tantamount to what we might decide warrants more than just simply a proclamation. It may become an actionable effort that becomes an initiative for the city, or maybe at some point denotes a councilmatic action. But all of that is a real possibility. So I can't just ignore if we don't have a process to ensure that something that comes into the space gets at least reviewed, maybe a majority of the council. I'm not trying at this point to try to create the process. I just want to keep reiterating examples of why it's extremely important to proactively create one.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Grassi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to defer to the group as the conversation goes. I do want to say that I do like Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Wood's idea of recognition versus proclamation, especially for businesses. I didn't read that part off your notes, so appreciate you sharing that with me. I would have concurred with that. So I do like that idea. I also want to affirm Councilmember Boykin's desire for the council to be able to hear the thought process. And I understand some of these things are emergent in nature and some, come up with our cycle of meetings. Is there a way perhaps that we could, baseline of if it comes up prior to, needs to, arise, that I would bring that up in the week before the meeting, and we could bring that up in our one-on-ones and then circle it back in front of the council during our council comments. I don't know if that's something where that could be added to do you have a proclamation idea on the council comment section? Is that an option?
Before we do, hold on. So go ahead and finish your comment.
Oh, well.
You were looking at him.
Yeah, I was looking at him.
Because she saw me baking a potential idea in there.
Yes, yeah.
So, one approach that you could potentially do, it gets awkward and cumbersome, but you could do it, is what I was looking at was the sequencing of your standard agenda under your council rules and to what extent a rule change would be necessary there. Your other option is that a draft proclamation could be prepared and council could vote on it. But that addresses that's even if you're on a short suspense, to use Councilmember Worthington's phrase, that's available, but it could be real weird if it doesn't generate a majority vote. If you got folks ready to go and you don't have that majority ready to go. You could do that. The thing, too, is also looking at the baseline. There are certain baseline proclamations I would tend to think, are fairly standard. I think, Councilmember Grassi, you used the example earlier of, MLK Day. That would strike as a potential baseline. One of our more recent baselines would be Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That was a council-initiated ask back in October. Whether that falls into what the mayor's talking about as a national recognized one or not, obviously I'll let council discuss. But that's the only other approach I could, suggest is if council wanted to take a vote on it and have the proclamation ready to go.
Okay. Well, I know, as much as you articulated, describe them as cumbersome and awkward and weird. I don't want to move forward with that. However, those aren't adjectives
I wasn't trying to be disparaging about it.
Would like to add, but I do understand your thought process there. But I see the conundrum. I think it's important that we are hearing every council member's thought process when one is brought up by a council member or they've been reached out to by a citizen. That's important to be able to hear that backstory and have that full story. So thank you.
Before we go on to Mayor Pro Tem, so when you said draft and approve it, that's not something the council can approve a draft, right?
No, what I was suggesting is that if you receive the request for proclamation, the proclamation would theoretically appear in the packet and council would vote, do we approve a proclamation to insert group here? And if the answer is yes, at the proclamation section of the agenda, a few minutes later, you have that group come down and present the proclamation. The challenge is if you have a proclamation that's in the packet and the proclamation doesn't garner a majority vote, you're seeing it for the first time, that process might not be there. I'm assuming it's all done in the same meeting.
But if it's in a package, they would have gotten the package beforehand.
They would have seen a draft proclamation.
Right. So, okay. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that thought. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Councilman Boykin, I really appreciate your thoughts on process. And so I started, brainstorming here, just process ideas. And I would just like to float these for either discussion or whatever anybody would like to do. But assuming we have a recognition level, a proclamation level, a process for recognition, I really like having an online form that somebody can complete. And it's a criteria for the recognition being a singular achievement that would be subjectively worthy for the city to recognize. Progressing from 5th to 6th grade while an achievement is not singular. But if a Curtis High School student was selected as a Daffodil Princess, that's a singular achievement. Something along those lines I think would be that, or a significant milestone. And this is where I'm getting into businesses and like the 25th anniversary, that kind of thing. Because I do think we should have an opportunity to recognize. And so with those kind of criteria, have a form that would be available online or something for somebody to apply. And then it would go to city staff for initial adjudication, then to council for one thing. Second one is for proclamation. Criteria there is it really has to be, I think, a statement of city values. Reflected in our vision statement, our value statement, something like that. So Martin Luther King Day, something like that would fit right in. And the two ways I'm right now envisioning two ways to get one of those done. One is through an annual process. Like you said, we have our baseline proclamations we're going to do every year, most every year, and just revisit them once a year at, say, a retreat. Or using the proposal request form, saying I want to do a proclamation, I've got 2 council members, and then it gets floated to the council for review. You can do a consensus head nod to see if you can get 4 or 5 people to, say, yes, I would like to proclaim this at our next meeting. And there's a time process to that. That's going to be at least like a 30-day thing. It's not going to be a last-minute thing. And then on what you were discussing, hey, we've got this delegation from the Philippines coming in, and it would be really nice to do something. I would say that we give the mayor and or mayor pro tem the authority to do a recognition on their own recognizance if they feel it represents what the city values are. So not a proclamation, a recognition. just saying we recognize the Philippine ambassador or the consulate general for coming down here. And that can just be done at short notice because the person's the mayor and they think it was a good idea. And if they don't feel comfortable with it, they can always say no. So that would be my thought process. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, would you put me on the list when you get time?
Yes, sir. Now we're going to put you on the list right now. But before I do, is just on that note, I think that's a great idea, but I believe that maybe at least have the mayor, if we voted on something like this, as a procedure, say mayor and mayor pro tem shall be, for them to both agree. Versus just one person. At least we have another one saying, okay, this looks good. I think the rest of the council will be happy with us. Things like that. Maybe we could even add the city manager because from the administration side, there's some of these could be, consequences because we say we want to and we have the right. And so I think that we always confer to our staff to make sure we're not stepping on it. But I think that maybe even the city manager, 3 people right there that really care about the city should be able to make that decision. So on that, Mr. Worthington.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I think those are all very good ideas, and we've heard a lot of good ones. Mayor Pro Tem Woods, I think, encapsulated a number of things we've all talked about, and so in my view, putting together an annual list of we're just going to do these proclamations every time, and if we review that annually and can affirm it or confirm it, whatever, great. Then we don't have to worry about many of the things that do reflect our values. I have to point and want to point out that we don't really have any place we've articulated our values, by the way. So we may hold them in our heart, we may share them together when we make decisions, but we don't articulate them in any place that I'm aware of. So we've tried, but that just hasn't quite come out yet. But aside from that small detail, the other issues of having a council proclamation with a process where council votes, hopefully not at the meeting it's given, maybe, that would work. Actually, I think it would work pretty well, and as we've laid that process out. The addition of a recognition, I'm entirely supportive of as well. That's a step below, and it would be for businesses, it would be for the Daffodil Princess, it would be for sports team recognitions. I would encourage you still to bring some of those, maybe all of those, but some of those into the room here. When we fill this chamber, it's because we're giving out recognitions of sports teams to our high school students. Yeah. And everyone loves it, including us. It's good for us, it's good for the community, and it doesn't have to be a proclamation. For the folks in the audience, there is no difference between a recognition and a proclamation. They just know they can watch themselves on YouTube or call up Uncle Henry, and Uncle Henry can see them on YouTube anytime he wants to, because that's what that does for them. So we can do that way. And then I was going to small tweak. So rather than a recognition for if it's the delegation or if it's that last minute thing that's important, we create a mayoral proclamation because after all, the mayor and the mayor pro tem could do those things and it fits their titles. And the mayor, your suggestion of having 2 voices or maybe 3 in that decision process, I think is good. But we could have a mayoral proclamation for urgent issues. And the mayor and mayor pro tem bear the burden of what that decision is, by the way, folks. And then we have the council process is a little more standard, and then the annual thing we do because we always are going to get MLK and another probably 20 proclamations that are routine to us. So, but I like that. So.
On this particular, you want to have another round? Okay.
Just a very
Ms.
short
McCluskey.
one because I stated pretty much what everyone is talking about here. The subjectivity to me is more about sensitivity as well. Being sensitive to maybe things that are happening currently in our environment, to take note of that if it's appropriate with our values and our beliefs, which is, we do have a vision statement, but as Councilmember Worthington indicated, each and every one of us comes to the council with 7 different values and 7 different interpretations, which is all good. And that brings in the subjectivity and the sensitivity components to that. And to allow ourselves the grace to take a step back and try to be as unbiased as we can to look at it, especially with some of the current events and things that are taking place. We have missed certain things along the way because no one really ever brought it forward. And some of those things in the back, I have a regret that we as a city, because it did represent our values and it did represent a support that we were amiss to do. To discuss those things in public on the dais is we may be a little apprehensive to do that. I think it's healthy that we discuss that in transparency. And so we will be confronted with these requests either from each other or from our citizens at large or from outside organizations. So just to be prepared, but also when we're going down this path, I would also defer to legal advice. What, as the mayor indicated, what are the landmines that we will possibly be inadvertently, in our good intentions, be landing on? Maybe we want to, maybe we don't. So for that reason, when you talk about the proclamations, and I agree there's differences between achievements and recognitions and proclamations, we take a note on some of these things and do have it in a study session. But then also be in the awareness that we're not going to impact our meetings agenda for more important meetings. So there has to be a rubber band tension or a indication. Now, if this proclamation is going to take a long time, maybe we need to go through a different route, especially if we have some other important things to discuss, like a deadline for a state mandate that's coming up. So subjectivity, there's a lot. So whatever we decide, whatever we do, we're not going to get rid of the subjectivity or the sensitivity that we'll have to decide upon, whether it's proclamation or recognition.
May I suggest, so we can move on to the next issue, and that is that I think, and maybe I shouldn't put words in our mouth, but Mr. Sugg, Mr. Kaiser, do you think you got enough feedback to come back with at least 2 or 3 options of how to best deal with this?
I think so. I'm mentally crafting what a rule might look like. And looking at general body language, head nods and such, I think a combination between what Mayor Pro Tem Wood as well as Councilmember Worthington had shared earlier is going to probably, when I go back through and review the video of tonight's meeting, will probably form at least a starting point of where I'm looking at the rule.
And I think that would be a good way to go to study session number 2 with that, and we can then get our heads wrapped around what looks good. I do like the comments that have been presented, which I hope you take into account, and I know you will, and that is that the sensitivity of how much time this kind of work can take up in agendas. As you will know, we get full in certain times of the year, and we can't just put 3 or 4, and then someone gets so sensitive that we can talk ourselves out of the whole thing. So please take that into account.
Yeah.
Okay, how we can maybe fast track that a little bit better.
Well, Yeah.
Okay. So with that, if we can move on to the next issue.
The next issue is in terms of the form of recognition, and you arguably have talked about this. In terms of what does the recognition look like? Obviously, you know, there is the council level proclamation. Some jurisdictions have mayoral recognitions and the like. And then I used in my earlier remarks, you know, like Puyallup went so high as to say the keys to the city. I think arguably you guys have, or the council has spoken to that already in terms of recognizing that there's certainly a council level recognition. There may be room for a mayoral level proclamation. I'm using recognition and proclamation interchangeably, and I shouldn't. A council level proclamation, a mayoral level proclamation, as well as recognition for other, you know, for other events and circumstances, whether it's the business or youth excellence in sports and other endeavors.
Okay. Yes. I'm talking about the other issues like, for example, the appointment, you know, and the finance committee. We need to, you know, discuss those. So
I had made a note to come back to that. So.
Okay. All right.
But I wanted to make sure that we were done with the proclamations discussion.
Yes.
I took your question to be still proclamation related.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we're done with that.
Okay.
Well, except that when you come back.
Right. I just want to make sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So, okay. With respect to, then let's kind of go there with those other three issues that we had led with. In terms of the finance, let me make sure I go back here. With respect to the finance committee modification of the agenda process and then the meeting end time. I don't know to what extent, Mayor, if you wanted to take them one at a time or just take them as a bundle.
One at a time only.
Just take them one at a time. On the agenda process, I had outlined earlier in terms of aligning agendizing items. Council had identified the potential disconnect within the rule with model language in the packet that I'm not necessarily going to belabor tonight. I don't know if Council had any additional thoughts on that.
On that, and I will take names, but I want to start, and that is that just from being on this council, and I know that should make a big difference. Many of us have been on it as long as I have, if not just almost as long. That is that after 16 years, it seems that it's hard to tell 30 minutes before if you're going to finish. It's closer to that 5-minute mark. Sometimes 10 minutes. I don't know how many times I think we can make it. We actually do, and sometimes not. And I have Mr. Mayor Pro Tem over here just nudging me, and I'm just holding on. But I think, you know, 5 minutes till that the Mayor Pro Tem or someone makes a point of order that we need to extend it. That's my thought. So, Mr. Worthington, you raise your hand?
I did. A couple of quick things, but appreciate with regards to the extension. I would suggest that actually as proposed to be drafted sometime after the 30-minute mark of the hour, assuming it, 30 minutes, when we're within 30 minutes of the end of the scheduled meeting, let's put it that way, we would, someone can then make that motion or do the point of order procedure for us. And I too saw, in fact, you and I had a hallway conversation after the last meeting, or maybe it was the meeting before that, where we're both looking at each other, gosh, I thought we were going to need to extend. I said, no, we aren't going to need to extend. And we were done with an extra 30 seconds to spare. You just sometimes don't know, and the clock helps you get to the finish line sometimes. So I think you need some flexibility. There's other times, though, when you've got 3 more items to go on the agenda, and it's 20 minutes before you're going to get to your cutoff time, clearly you need to do something. So we bring it up in that phase, I would suggest. The other thing on this subject, I thought we were doing legislative proposals, but we're not.
We were.
We were. Okay. Either request or proposal, one of the two, but they're redundant. I don't care which myself.
I didn't. Yeah. I'm indifferent. It's council's process.
If I may, if I have point of order, yes, I'd like to just do one at a time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get all of a sudden we haven't even made a decision. People haven't talked about the 30-minute before or whatever. I'd like to finish that discussion before we get into the legislative proposal and what we name it or whatever we do. So if we'd like to do that. So if we can, those that want to speak to the 30-minute, 10-minute, or whatever. Ms. McCluskey.
Thank you. I like the point of order for the after 8:30, anytime after 8:30 and approaching whatever, do the meeting extension. So don't have a specific timestamp, but sometime after 8:30, Mayor Pro Tem or a council member could call for the point of order to extend the meeting if it's going that far. That would give you kind of a fudge factor in there.
Okay, I saw Mr. Borgen. Did you raise your hand by chance?
I did not.
You did? Okay, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
So just briefly, I think your intent, but what Councilmember Worthington was saying is just within 30 minutes of the end of the scheduled meeting, 'cause some of our meetings go to 9:30 or something like that. So I think I agree with that one. It doesn't specifically say in here the option of extending the meeting. It just says review agenda priorities. Because one of the options is we decide we don't talk about something, which is great. Do we need to have something in here that specifically says to review agenda priorities or extend the meeting?
I suppose the question is for council. Do you see a distinction between the two? Because if you see a distinction between the two, we can make the rule amendment.
I see a distinction, but that's only two. We need to kind of go around, and if you can just go, Mr. Kaser, if you can just look at each council member and say what they are thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm seeing yes.
Okay, good enough. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, so just real quick, I think that you're completely right, Mr. Worthington, and that is that, when there's two more items, for example, still left, I think that's good to have it at least 30 minutes before or review the agenda, the priorities agenda. I think that's a very good time, and given enough time for staff or whoever else is waiting, or whatever else the case may be that might be appropriate to go ahead and make that decision well and a half. If it's really about, it could be a time that has nothing to do with priorities of the agenda. It could be we just need an extension because, we just need about another so minutes. So it could be or and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and one other change, based on something Councilmember Worthington had made, or they're going to be linked changes. I noticed as I'm looking at the rule, it says they shall adjourn at 9 p.m. The thought is to add additional language or at such time as published in the agenda, which also then would conform with the idea that instead of being at or dealing with the at or after 8:30, just say within 30 minutes of the scheduled end of the meeting. Because sometimes we calendar it for 9:30.
A lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
If there's not any more conversation on that, you'll come back with.
We'll come back. That's
Okay, language. Okay. Then we move on to the so-called proposal, and remind me on that because
that's where my comments were originally. That you have two different portions of the rule which are not in sync with each other. In terms of getting items on the agenda, you have the legislative proposal process as well as the agendizing process. They should be in sync, but they are not. And so the rule proposal in there would effectively move a portion of the rule so it's found essentially in one spot with the corresponding change to the form. And then the comment was made earlier, the revised, what has been called the legislative proposal form in the package identifies agenda proposal / request. The thought was, well, it's duplicative. I'm indifferent whether you call it proposal or request. We just need to call it something.
Could we do both?
You can do both. I mean, you can leave it as is.
So let's go around and just a brief comment, and you'll figure it out. But we'll go with Ms. Grassi, and then we'll go around the table. And
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry for. Can you please distinguish again for me? I'm the slow one up here. The differences, where they're conflicting.
They are conflicting in two different sections of the rule. So your current rule under section 7.4 provides that an item can be placed on the agenda in one of four different ways. Council consensus is determined by the mayor. by the manager, the mayor, or by 2 council members. Now, historically, if you have 2 council members that want to put an item on the agenda, they are directed towards the legislative proposal form. Not every item triggers the need for legislation. So it's not unheard of for a legislative proposal form to come forward, and then it's, well, there's no corresponding legislation. So streamlining and consolidating that process under a separate section of one of your other rules that already recognizes that.
I see. Okay.
And then the corresponding change to the proposal form with the different boxes that we discussed earlier.
Got it. Thank you.
Did you want to provide a comment?
No, I'm sorry. That's all I needed. Thank you. Thank you.
Did you want to have an opinion on what he should do?
No, I just wanted the clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Worthington?
Yes, I'm indifferent also as whether it's proposal or request, but I think they are redundant. They mean the same thing, and we should just pick one of the 2 words. I'll flip a coin if we want to do it that way.
Okay, and for me is why not 2 boxes? To me, there's a legislative proposal. You want to look at legislation, whether it be a resolution, whether it be an ordinance, or whatever the case may be. The other one is if it is in legislation, then there should be a box saying other or whatever. And that could be other than the legislation. Right. Well, you have it there, other.
Yeah.
Correct. But there should be some distinguishing. I don't know if we can put it just in one category.
You can check multiple boxes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there's a series of check boxes on one of those that says it can be legislative, it can be a study session item, it can be, right. So that's just fine. My comment was only about the title.
Oh, excuse me.
The word
Okay.
proposal and request are redundant.
Oh.
They mean the same thing. We should just simplify our language. It should just be proposal or request.
I bless your comment.
Okay.
All right. My opinion?
Yes.
Well, I am absolutely dead set we got to call this a proposal. No, just kidding. I don't care. Proposal request.
One or the
I really
other.
don't care. I agree. One of the others fine. You want a decision? I'll say proposal. Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Murkowski.
Okay. Well, I think they mean the same thing, but they're a little different. And you do have in the next box, nature of request. So that leads me to think that maybe proposal should be struck. And in the box that says legislation, Mr. Kaiser, we should have legislative proposal on it, maybe. So or not. It's as long as the action creates either or, we can align with what you put in the box as a request, so agenda request. Whether it leads to legislation or study or discussion, proclamation or recognition, which is our council format, this right to request a proclamation or a recognition, which I like, or other things that happen for that. Okay.
Mr. Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me ask a clarifying question, please, of Mr. Kaiser. I'm trying to determine, is anything that we offer up through the legislative effort, whether it's a proposal or a request, does any of it mandate a councilmatic action?
Just so we're clear, what are you referring to? So,
What's helping me determine, for example, which name may be leading for my vote. I'm trying to determine if I'm after something that I offer up where I'm looking for the council to vote ultimately on it, as opposed to it moving into a different action.
Not everything would necessarily lead to a council vote. So if 2 members of the council say, we want to discuss insert topic here, and maybe there's no legislation attached to it. And this is something I have told, I think, some of you, where I'll get a legislative proposal form or a request for legislation, and I say, well, wait a second, this isn't actually a request for legislation. Where would you like to codify this? And sometimes the answer is, yeah, that's probably not codifiable, but I'd like to talk about it. Okay, we can talk about it, and it still honors the intent in the rule where an agenda item can be placed by any two council members.
Okay. So it would be a series of actions actually to move anything that may be, in my mind, the premise, if I'm looking ultimately for a council vote, whatever that is. It would be a series of actions, but it wouldn't start off by the name being either legislative proposal or legislative request. It would come from an iterative process, however it is that was introduced.
It could lead to legislation which may trigger a vote, or it could be, hey, this is something we probably need to talk about as a council.
Okay. Then I'm certainly indifferent as to which name leads. It makes me...
Okay, I think you got your direction.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so the last point.
Finance Committee, council had discussed at the...
Oh, excuse me. Pardon me, Mayor Pro Tem.
So we were just talking about the proposal request thing, so I kept my comments there. I would like to add, I'm not entirely sure we need initially physical impact or resources required even on this form, because frankly, the legislative proposal should just go to the background information we want to talk about it. The staff is going to come up with physical impact as part of the discussion, resources required. I don't have the ability to determine that.
Yeah.
And so if it's a proclamation recognition, cost is a piece of paper. I don't need to write that down. If it's a study thing like when are we going to have the piano fixed downstairs, that's just a discussion. And you guys can tell us it's going to cost us $1,000 to fix a piano. If it's a legislative proposal, I want to do an arts commission, I have no idea what that's going to cost. You're going to tell us that at some point in the process. So putting in physical impact, most of the time I'm going to put in something like NA or staff time. I'm not sure that's a value-added component to what we fill out as part of the council.
So if I could just answer that a little bit, attempt to, but the purpose of that, as I was around when this got developed, was that this is not a standalone council member fill-out form. This is in conjunction, vetting it out with staff, whatever staff requires to fill this out appropriately, which again, and physical impact was always important to bring before, and you wouldn't fill it out because you're absolutely right. It's staff's work. That's why we wanted two people, because sometimes one person would do it and nobody was really interested in it, and they'd go to work, but at least two people were asking for it. They would do some homework and help fill this out, including the verbiage here to make it real clear what is it that you're being asked, or maybe educate those two council members saying, you may want this, but the law here says you just can't, the council can't do this. Oh, okay. So they're very much involved in filling this out with you. So you get your intent before the council correctly.
Okay, because that was not exactly my experience when I did a legislative proposal.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Worthington.
Thank you, if there is anybody else. So, but I think, Mayor Pro Tem Wood, I think you bring up a very good question. There's two ways to interpret that. Is it the resources to conduct the action of study or development? So how many staff hours, or we need an engineer? Or is it the cost of, if the proposal's to terraform J Island into 1 square mile, what is that, do we identify how much that's going to cost? So, and I know Councilman McCluskey has that number. But aside from the silliness of that, it's a really good question, because it could mean either of those things unless we clarify it on the proposal. So.
Well, let's clarify it. I think that's a very good one. But before we go, did you raise your hand? I didn't want to miss you. Okay. Ms. McCluskey.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. One of the reasons why it was designed to have those two things in it is to have the council members who are signing it think about that. Because it could be a really great idea and you're really excited about it and you're on fire. You just came from AWC and we got to do it for our city. So let's do it. So we're getting it all down there, and then we come to, fiscal impact. We have to think about that because we have fiduciary duties. How much is that actually going to cost to do that really cool piece of infrastructure that we are just so excited about. And then as the two council members think about that, and they think about, well, we do want to pay down our long-term debt. Well, maybe it's not a good idea to discuss it. And that could be a way, because it's a logical thought process, so that when we get down to signing, the two council members get down to signing that, they have actually thought about all of those things. You know, like the resources required, you know, on our 101s, hey, this is the idea, we're going to put it forward, and Mr. Stuggs says, well, do you want to hire another full-time person? Because that's what it's going to take. And then you go circle back to your second council member and you say, well, here's the information here. Do you still want to sign or not? So I think it's value added, whether we do NA or not, because certainly for the Art Commission, that was hard to define. It will be hard for the staff to define until the council defines it. Then they could define it. But there's other things that we use this for that it could be a little more definable. And so it's just a way for us to vet it. And then if it stops here and doesn't go any further, then there's no council action and it doesn't get placed on the agenda.
So it could be, Ms. Porter, I'll get to you in a minute, but it could be that it should have been a box that said, you know, we all have seen many forms that staff only, or is directed to someone else other than who's filling out the form. And I think this is one of those boxes. You're right, we can't fill it out, but I think that we need some initial, as a council, what it may look like, even if it's just an estimate. You know, we always estimate, because I think it's important to get an idea, because part of the conversation right away is, what's this going to cost? Well, I didn't come prepared because we weren't asked to do so. I think that we should go ahead and have that asked, and it'll be a staff box. Mr. Worthington.
Yes, I think Councilmember Boykin, I think I saw his hand go up.
Oh, excuse me. My bad. Mr. Boykin.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Worthington. You just give me one more reason why I know I'm really going to miss you. But no, seriously, I just really want to appreciate the comments, Mr. Mayor, and in particular, Councilmember McCluskey, for giving me the back story behind the fiscal impact, as I was struggling with when this comes into play and how value-added it is. But if the process by intent is supposed to have this as part of the process in and of itself, it not only makes too much sense, and then the expectation of having at least two people gives the opportunity for you to have additional information and then help understand what the impact may be, such that if you bring it forward to other members of the council, we get the full story. And so again, for me, it's just really important to be really clear about what the process is, that the process is transparent, and just importantly, that the process is respected. Because if that's part of the story, I can assure you, I'm excited about keeping that in place, as well as seeing how it works out based upon it being its best representation of helping us all best understand the entire process. So thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Mr. Worthington.
Thank you. And so I think it's exactly both the things that are, again, this question can be interpreted two different ways. I think it is entirely very valuable and important for the proposal, for the proposers, to have an idea, you know, is it $3 million, is it $100,000, you know, something of the scale of cost. That's a reasonably good guess. That's I think, important for all of us to know in the course of this. Is that in the fiscal impact above that? Is that what that's supposed to refer to? Or is it in the resources? Because when I look at the resources, my first way I read that is that it's going to take, you know, about 15 hours of staff time to develop this for the agenda and to participate in the discussion. And it's that staff resource in the course of just doing the proposal that I think about resources required. And I'm just wondering if I'm confused over that, if other people are confused over that too, and we should clarify it to say fiscal impact is the cost of the proposal when completed. Resources required is the amount of staff or other resources needed to consider the issue, or whatever the magic words are. But something to verify, if that's what this means.
I think you hit it in the head, if I can remember, and that was resources is, again, exactly what we just talked about. How many trucks, how many tractors, how many staff people, and because who's going to be taken away from normal work? Or do we have to hire somebody? You're right, we need to identify it should be cost, funding required.
So fiscal impact could be cost of the to complete the project, which is to build the tower, or...
And it could be estimated cost, doesn't have to be like concrete.
Doesn't have to be tight, doesn't have to be exact, but some scale of cost.
Right.
And then resources required is more about just running this proposal through the agenda.
Right.
That also has resources, and that's what I think resources required are. But I'm not certain, because I think we seem to have different interpretations.
So on that note, let's ask, because we have two experts in front of us that deals with this kind of stuff, let's give some input based on our discussion.
So here's where I come from on this, and I approach this from a slightly different lens, but it does overlap with some of your discussion. These two fields, as memory serves, are actually carryovers from your current legislative proposal form. So in preparing the revised form, we just kept them. So at the end of the day, the question remains for council: what utility do you see on the form? Anytime you're filling out any form, there should be a reason for every block on the form. And so the question for council, and you have different answers amongst you, is do you see utility in asking for financial impact and resources required? I'm hearing that clearly with respect to financial impact, that there's a need there. For the resources required, if council has different interpretations, you can do a couple different things. You can delete it. You can set forth, as a proponent, what you think those resources required, whether it's through the proposal stage or the post-proposal stage, assuming that it's implemented, as long as it's clearly disclaimed and disclosed on the form. But the question is, at the end of the day, does council find it useful to have it on this form? If it's useful, keep it. If it's not, we can delete it.
I think that it's useful, but useful if it's filled out by, again, that's a staff box, because only staff can fill out. You, Mr. Sugg, can evaluate with your staff that, okay, it's going to take, 8 staff at this level, and this level, and this work is not going to be done if we implement something you want to have done. I think, to me, there's a lot of value. So, Mr. Worth, MPT.
Thank you, Mayor. So with that, man, I liked what Councilmember Worthington was saying about if we target resources required on staff input to the legislative process. And then physical impact is for the legislation as a whole. And to draw this back to the Arts Commission proposal from earlier, because Councilmember McCluskey and I completed the whole form, gave it to staff published it as is, and distributed it to the rest of the council. What I would like to see then is, as the mayor was discussing, that the top blocks are from the council members, down through background information. As we understand it, it goes to staff. Staff does the quick analysis that says, we think this is going to take 2 staff, X number of hours over a period of 6 months to come up with an answer to discuss this legislation. So, because when I did my legislative proposal of Arts Commission, I said, I don't want to know. The directive was to study an Arts Commission, not to establish an Arts Commission. And I did that deliberately because I wanted it studied rather than, but the cost, I know that study takes time and effort and cost. And so maybe if we just bake that into our process right up front, I think that'd be very helpful. So then when the legislative proposal comes to council, and you come back and say, this resource is going to require 300 hours of staff time over the next 3 months to come up with an answer, all of a sudden we've just given you another council priority that may not be what the council wants to do right now when we've already given you our top 5 priorities for the coming period. But if we understand that going forward, I think that would be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, maybe if you have enough, you could come back with some options that may look appropriate. and for us to, look at. But I'll give you an example where it's important, because take the 30th anniversary. You saw the cost of the actual event or parts of the event, but then there was the staff portion, and you saw so much staff, which was another cost to that. But the staffing for this took away, was extra overtime. There are certain things that, in that box could say, Steve could say, from the staff's perspective, say, there's no additional staff time required because this is part of their duties, working with the commission, liaison, all that kind of stuff. So they can actually say, there's no staff time here, there's zero end game here. But if it's really different out of the ordinary, it's going to be overtime, whatever the case may be, like the 30th anniversary. I think that it's appropriate for us to know. I don't see any other ones. Oh, okay, Ms. McCluskey.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're going to keep physical impact and resources required on it.
They may name it something different.
Okay. We will discuss with the staff this legislative proposal so that we can fine-tune it as much as possible with minimal staff, expenditures in it until the council has the discussion. Because there's two parts to this. The overall fiscal impact of the action of the discussion and the preparing for it, that is basically has been done for the most part by the council members. And then it comes to the council for further discussion, and then there's direction to the staff to further do the deeper dive. So what I am hearing is that the two council members the one council member that's designing it, and then the second council member is buying into it, those two council members will somehow need a meeting with the staff to do the fiscal impact and the resources, or can okay, so I'm not tracking right. Okay, because we can't define it accurately, so in the past, the two council members will give guesstimates for it, and that's it, until the council as a whole gives direction to the staff after the study session.
So I think, I'm glad we're doing this, because something has gotten off track. I have not done a legislative proposal for a long time, but I do remember when it started. I was one that used it a lot. And one of the things that I did was I sat down with staff, whoever Steve said, go and see the attorney or go and see Kevin or whomever, and say, how do you word this that makes sense, and clarify it. I mean, a lot of times I get this idea, but I don't know how to word it, and it needs to be worded right. So it was always to get to the staff to help and assist and writing it so it's clear and also it's technically and legally correct. Okay, and so I don't know how that got off track. Well, I'm hearing that lately people are just writing it down. They don't even sit with staff to explain what the heck they're writing down. That was not how this whole thing started. So we need to put that on track, or at least if that's going to change.
I was the one that pretty much designed it, and so that was my intention, because I didn't want any staff time to be used on something that the council is saying, oh no, we're not going down that pathway. Or if they are encouraged to, then the staff will have a direction to, Mr. Sugg can create a staffing and assign the projects and get a more definitive numbers down and the exact resources that they need, and they circle back with council and say, this is what it's going to be, so do you still want it or not? So, it's the proposals, this legislative proposal, or just basically a lot of it that I did was just for study and discussion, brainstorming. And in that brainstorming, in that discussion, it has always improved and changed its face, but not its intent to go forward. So I use it as a, let's get this rough idea, this diamond in the rough down, refine it a little bit as much as we can, and provide it to the council for further refinement and discussion or not. Then it goes to the staff. So that's kind of how.
So, Mr. Worthington.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. So what you said at the beginning there about the fiscal impact and how the proposers, the two council members, would generate that number, that's my
It's not really a number. It's kind of a general, the physical impact. We believe that it will be impacting the city, with a guesstimate of what we have heard maybe from the conference that we came from, of around $20,000. Something like that.
But it has
and
a
then in the resources and things, we'll be thinking, well, to do this, what do we think who's going to engage in the staff? How much, that engagement is for those personnel and the soft. So you're thinking about the hard costs and you're thinking about the soft costs.
So I think that's one of the perhaps challenges is it's been unclear because I think some of us were seeing, or at least I was seeing fiscal impact as combining both hard and soft cost. It's the cost of achieving this goal. Where the resources required are the staff resources to take it through the legislative process, which probably, when we might turn to, I think the mayor was talking about asking staff to fill that part out because Steve and his team probably know the average legislative proposal takes 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is for staff time, and they get to mark that down. And it's fair for us to recognize it takes staff resource to run this through, but we're all thinking it's probably worth 4 hours, or what that is. And some may be extraordinary because they take a high level of staff involvement. Doesn't happen often, but now and then, just to consider the thing, we've got a small army we need to mobilize to get the information we need to make the decision. And so that's where that number might be a bit different than 3 or 4 hours of staff. Now, that's as I was interpreting it, and I think some of the group was, as opposed to some breakout between the physical construction or physical cost. There's also the difference between thinking of these as a piece of policy that has a cost to it, or some sort of physical component. We're going to build a new park. We're going to rebuild the Public Works building, whatever that is. Anyhow. So, are we right? Is the essentially the person who was the genesis of this? If we think of that fiscal component of being the cost of the completed project and the resource component, resources required as the legislative cost for the city to process to take it through the legislative process. That's, I think, where we were headed.
Yeah, well, I have a different, whatever the council wants, but I had it where fiscal impact is more the hard numbers, the hard costs, and the resources required is the softer costs. We were talking about the staff time and the preparation, the design pieces to that. There's times where I vet some of these proposals in my mind in my one-on-ones, and in those one-on-ones I get a quick synopsis of generalized, if I wanted to go forward with it or not from that.
Yeah.
But it's basically high-level guesstimations until the council says yes or no. Then it's engaged in the deeper dive to engage the staff. Because I don't want the staff to spend a lot of time on this personally until the council as a whole gives the direction.
So, if I may add, in this, I can see we all have different opinion what the heck this form's supposed to do, so we need to straighten it out. But one of the things was how That's for sure, she said. I don't understand that.
Somehow my assistant on the phone will be.
But that's the issue is eventually, pretty quick, if you come with just a broad idea without really touching with staff about any details, there's going to be so many questions. Well, what about this? What about that? Now we're saying, well, yeah, we're interested, but and then we're still going to have them go do the work. So why not have them do the work on something legitimate? I consider this as an executive board, just like you would to a corporation. And I've never really seen where a brainstorming piece, it's just an idea comes, those usually just come out in a meeting, but not as a proposal. And the proposal usually comes together with some facts and some real information.
Well, it does have facts. It's not a willy-nilly thing, but to really get down into the weeds of some of the requests or proposals, it's going to require, significant staff time to do that. And unless the council is not interested in it, why even create that? One council member is requesting this.
Two.
And, well, initially, there'll be one. Then the second one will come on later, typically, or not. Why have that one council member create additional work for the staff when the council as a whole would not be interested at all? Mm-hmm. Why not just have it in a rough diamond format? Because every time you do one of these proposals, it's going to look different at the end of the day. It's going to look better. And it's going to give staff some more definitive direction on where to go. And we're not wasting time staff, time money, angst with that. Because it's just...
Let's hear from the staff.
Okay.
So you've got two different approaches, I think, which are on full display here. One of the challenges from the staff perspective is each of you are 7 independently elected individuals, each with your own constituencies. And it is a dangerous position for staff to start telling council members, well, maybe you can't do that or shouldn't submit that. But you have that independent right because the voters elected you to do the legislative component. And so what you're seeing with the two different approaches, and I'll just use Mayor Figueroa's approach as well as Councilmember McCluskey's approach just to compare and contrast, is do you get staff review, particularly on the financial components on the front end, or do you get it, as I understand it, sort of at a later stage? But there's a recognition it needs to be there at some point in the course of the deliberative process. So how do you wish for that to be memorialized? Do you wish for that to be, as I would call it, above the signature, carrying the council member's signature? Or is that something, there's a box that goes below, you move those items below the signature where the recognition that's a staff review is followed with a financial, I don't want to call it a full-fledged financial impact statement, but that's generally the gist of where I'm going with this. That there's a recognition that there is a financial impact, whether it's known or not. By the time it's dropped with the city clerk, under your rule, it has 90 days to make an agenda from the time it hits the city clerk's office. So there's some lead time in there. So hopefully in that 90 days, or even before it gets dropped to the city clerk's office, the financial impact component is otherwise addressed. But the issue isn't simply the financial impact. I think has recognized there are some other departments, depending on the nature of the legislative proposal, that require certain touches. If you're looking at, to use Councilmember Worthington's example, you want to fill in Day Island or make it a 1 acre bit, you're going to want to probably hear from your engineering staff. You're also going to probably want to hear from your legal staff on the wisdom of that. It's not wise to fill in Day Island, just so we're clear. But if you have a zoning proposal, you'll probably want to have, a review at least by your Community and Economic Development Department, together with a potential flag that it may require Planning Commission review. But where do you want that staged? Do you want it staged before the council member drops it, or are you okay after the council member drops it? And I think that's really the gist of where the discussion needs to be, and making sure that the 7 of you are generally on the same page as far as that process goes.
Mr. Wood.
So I just wanted to say I really like that thought of dropping the physical impact and stuff below the signature line, with the idea that staff, it'll be submitted by 2 council members, 2 staffs. Staff does it in a very, like you said, very rough assessment, and then brings it forward to council within that 90 days. I think that's actually a really good idea. If you guys can support that, I would support that.
Just a quick comment.
Okay.
Just naming it, because maybe there's semantics, but when you talk about resources or fiscal, maybe it's just staff review, and you guys decide, you, Mr. Sag, as the CEO, and decide which staff, or maybe all of them, you just put on there, and I've seen that box, environmental, permitting, whatever, your key 3 or 4 departments, and then city attorney. And if somebody says no comments, others say, comments. So I don't know, maybe we'd take out the fiscal impact or resources and just lay it out as department review, not staff, but department reviews. Something like that. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm game. I think it needs to be separate and do staff department reviews if needed. We'll start with Ms. Grassi over here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in favor of, I concur with Mayor Pro Tem Wood, dropping it below the signature line and going from there as far as, but I do want to echo my support for Councilmember McCluskey's idea that I do see this as a way to get all of our other collective wisdom into the game, and whatever we need to provide for that process. Some people might be more subject matter experts in cost, et cetera, as we get that ball down the line. So I don't want anything to inhibit us getting to this dais of gold that we have here, of getting our collective ideas together. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Worthington.
Thank you. I think the fiscal impact, as Councilmember McCluskey describes it, I think the resources required, as Mayor Pro Tem Wood laid out, having that come below the signature line, I think is the easiest way to state it. Sounds good to me. So.
I think that below the line, but as far as, do you do it before it drops to the city clerk or not? I say he has to have some kind of review from.
I'm going to jump in here.
Okay, Mr. Sag.
In order not to impede the progress of the legislative proposal, and once it's submitted to the city clerk, we have 90 days to get it. The mayor, the agenda process is 90 days to put this on the agenda for council to, take a first look at it. The way I've always seen the legislative proposal as it comes forward is something the council even wants to look at further. You have 2 members on council out of 7 that would like their colleagues to study this. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But you get a chance, the 2 that are proposing this get a chance to discuss it with their colleagues. Staff has no input on that at that level. So let the legislative proposal come forward to a council meeting, and then you decide, is this something you want to look in further, and you direct the staff, council then directs the staff to bring this back for study session, do all the staff analysis that's necessary, similar to what was done with the Arts Commission, which is coming back on September 2. Mm-hmm. We were not in a position to analyze that in an appropriate time, but your legislative proposal needed to get in front of the council, which it did, and now we have sufficient time between now and September 2 to do the analysis, and so that you can have a productive study session. So this is not the time to do a productive study session. It's just a time, legislative proposal, 2 members, to make their pitch as to why the council should spend some time on this, and subsequently the staff. That's all I wanted to say on that.
So I buy that, and so if we do that, if it looks like it's going in that way, we shouldn't have anything below the signature box. We shouldn't have what resources or whatever, because it's not time yet to have anybody comment on that. Correct?
It creates an unnecessary burden on the two members that want to put this legislative proposal forward. You're not supposed to be the experts in those areas of legal, financial, engineering, et cetera. You've got an idea, you believe in this idea, you want to put it forward, make your pitch to the council, your colleagues.
My view is to exactly that, but not to have anything that draws attention to having to fill boxes that is not going to be filled out to after the council says, yes, let's do more homework. So your turn, and we'll come back to you.
Yeah, and I want to see if there's other members over there. A lot.
Are you done?
No.
Okay, Mr. Wood.
So just real quick, my thought is, I like that, but I will say that if a proposal comes to me of some kind, I'm going to be asking you, how hard is this going to be for you to study? How much time do you need to do it? And so even if it's not on the form, I'll be asking that because I don't want to give you a project that you just don't have time to do.
That's fair. That's fair. But we won't be doing the full, the in-depth analysis, but we'll give you a sense, a ballpark sense of what we believe will be necessary.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Ms. McCluskey, any further information before we go to Mr. Boykin?
I like the direction that this is going because it isn't about staff putting in any time, approving signatures. It's the council owns it. It comes to the council in its pure state. This is it, but I do believe that the council members that are doing this request or proposal should be cognizant of the fiscal impact and the resources as they're doing this. It's a logical pattern to discuss and decide. Even if it's a guesstimate, at least the other council members, the other 5 council members know that they had that review in the back of their mind. They had that discussion when they met prior to the finalization of the proposal before they give it to the city manager or to the city clerk. I think it's an essential piece because we're all cognizant. We do our fiduciary duty to ensure that we stay within our budgets. And if we have something that we're going to blow the budget to smithereens, then probably we won't do it. After we think about it, after we go through the process and then we get to the fiscal impact, we're going, oh, maybe not.
Mr. Boykin.
I think that begins to underpin my comment and thought, particularly based upon Mr. Suggs' comments and then the direction that we're now going. So with that, if we go in that direction, do we now need to change this form? Because I was following it based upon the expectation, again, about the history, and I was seeing how it made an impact and made sense to help us along. But if we were going to move in that direction, should we now consider changing this form?
And that's what I was talking about. Why have those boxes underneath the signature? What's the purpose of that if it's not going to be filled out? And you can post those questions at the meeting, but I don't think, because then some of us are going to be gone and new people are going to come in and says, well, okay, I got to fill this out, but there's these boxes here, and they're going to be bothering. Staff says, you got to fill out this box before we turn it in, So I think let's just take those boxes out. Mr. Worthington.
Yes, so a couple of things. I don't think we want to take the boxes out to begin with, and I'll get to that in a moment. But first, let me say that I think we absolutely, as Councilmember McCluskey says, it's essential that the proponents figure out the fiscal impact and help us understand what that number might be. And it's not going to be to the penny. I don't expect it to the thousand. I just expect what I usually refer to as a magnitude cost. But that's essential so we can make a decision. But similarly, it's essential for me as one council member, and as Mayor Pro Tem Wood pointed out, it's part of my decision process to know now how is this going to impact the staff today
100%.
running the legislative process. And if it's 3 or 4 hours or whatever the standard is that we usually have, no big deal. That's just fine. But someone should say that. And if it's the proponents, that's fine with me. If it's the city manager, that's fine with me. But someone should have that information on the proposal so we can all look at it and go, oh, it's only 5 hours like always. That's good. And I look at it and go, it's 600 hours to run the proposal because there's a bunch of stuff that we have to do before we can do our decision process. That's different. And you know, this is where it comes out. And then I'm not going to be quite as friendly to it unless I really see a benefit that's worth 600 hours of early staff time. And again, that's not fulfilling, that would be 600 hours in the legislative process. You've already captured all those other costs in the fiscal note. So, and that's the distinction I think that we have, if you will, between us, is what that note, what that resources required means. Clearly we need to change the wording or make it go away. But I think we lose some of our key analytical tools unless for the extraordinary proposal, which do come at times. So,
I think like a critical, and I'll give it to Mr. Sack, he likes to speak, but it's, for example, I would, you know, if you know for sure that a consultant is going to be required, I would say consultant required. That makes a big, even if you didn't have a number, sure, it tells me a lot. Anyway, Mr. Sack.
Well, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to use the word consultant. If what is being proposed by 2 members of the council would then trigger, and the rest of the council says, that's great, go ahead, staff, and look into that. That could, you know, we should know ahead of time before even the legislative proposal comes to you that this could trigger the need to spend $50,000 on a consultant. I'm just throwing a number out there because it's an ambitious legislative proposal. Some are more modest and some are more aggressive and more ambitious. So I would modify my own comments from earlier.
Okay.
That probably needs to be understood.
Correct. So, I mean, I guess that's what a study session is for. So I think that we keep it. It's my opinion that we should keep it with the understanding that this is at the high level. And I don't know how. It's up to you guys to bring some proposals to best word this and to lay it out so that it makes sense for what you heard. Is that? I'd like to give that, for us to give that direction for them to just bring back. I think they've heard enough and our concerns and how we like to see this process that doesn't do what we've been talking about or does what we're supposed to do. So, is everybody okay with that? Yes. Okay. Do you need any further?
We'll mock up some examples.
You need any further direction?
Not on this.
Clarification?
Not on this.
Okay. And the amount of time we have left, if you didn't understand English, I could say it all in Spanish.
No, we have 19 minutes to deal with Finance Committee.
Mr. Mayor.
That's
Okay.
9:30.
Yes, Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. Before, I thought we were close. We still have Finance Committee, but I just had a question back on proclamations. I'm so sorry, but am I to understand that all proclamations are on hold until we finalize this proclamation study, because we have other holidays coming up, Juneteenth and things, and I think there's some ambiguity around that, and we didn't touch on that.
Let me make a suggestion, because I know what you're saying, and it's a great. So we have a list of ones that we've done before. I think we can send them to the council members as far as being efficient. And just mark it up of the ones that you think are at that high level, and send it in. And Steve and they'll look at it, and we'll look at it and share and say to council, hey, this are the top 5 or top whatever national things that everybody agreed on. There's got to be some common ground that will come out of that and shake it off. I mean, that might be just a first start if we're not happy with that.
Well, at least from now until the next study session, look at the calendar from now until whenever this is coming back to council. Back to my original comments on honor, I don't want to miss something that we want to honor as a city because we're on hold on a procedural decision.
Well, the list is there. I don't think it would take more than 10, 15 minutes for us to comment back. It could be done all in one day, literally. Yeah, they give it to us, we respond back, and they say, "Oh, this are like everybody's in sync."
What I understand, Councilmember Grassi, you're speaking about specifically with respect to Juneteenth.
Correct.
You have one council meeting between now and then.
Correct. So that's why I'm looking at the calendar saying, I don't want to miss it, or I didn't understand. I've heard varying things. Our proclamation's on hold. What are we doing? And I want to have that conversation before it's too late.
So what I'm saying is we can do that through just direction. We don't need a vote. Just direction. The direction is show us the list, and we can respond back with the first 5, or whatever it is, and there'll be some commonality. If we would really are specific on June 19th, is we can just give direction right now.
Yeah, that's where I was about to say, to avoid an OPMA violation. And I'm looking at head nods.
I agree.
For that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. How's that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's very good.
Okay. So back to the last item.
Finance Committee.
Okay.
In the 16 minutes you have left before you're set for adjournment, Council at the January retreat had discussed eliminating the Finance Committee instead on a quarterly basis proceeding with financial reports. Language is included in the proposed rule to eliminate the Finance Committee.
I'll start again, and that is that I think we're trying to be more efficient. That particular process provides for a more efficient where we don't have to meet earlier just for that. Usually we're talking about 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes at the most. Most, if you notice, through time, the trend is that there's certain months, especially in the first 4 months, it's hard to fill the agendas. That's how it trends. So why not fill that agenda with that? And when they're kind of, so I think they're not really required. Is there a requirement when they should be done?
Yes.
A requirement for when the Finance Committee is supposed to? The requirement is yours.
Yes.
But under your current rules, it's done quarterly.
But there are still hours. There's no state or whatever. So I think that we do, the 2 reports or meetings, and we do it when there's usually at the end of the summer, and there's always something in the beginning that usually we're trying to fill. So, Mr. Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. So my recollection, I haven't read this for a long time, but my recollection is we have a policy that says we're going to do it quarterly, and part of it is our fiduciary duty to bondholders. The bond companies like to see that the council reviews our financial statements regularly. Quarterly is good enough. But if we only do it for the first half of the year and we don't do it the second half of the year, we break that bond. We break that trust. And that's a problem, at least in our hearts. So I think that's, if we can figure out a way to do this quarterly in a regular meeting, great. If we make a provision for 30-minute special meetings of the whole council just for finance, that's another way to do it. But, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what I recall and all. And it helps the bondholders, or at least the bond underwriters, feel like we're doing our job.
So before we move on, so we could do both, and that set it up for say it's quarterly, and if it can fit in a regular meeting, fine. If not, we have a special session. Okay. So, Mr. Wood.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Do it quarterly in a regular meeting unless we can't fit it.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're talking about a special meeting, to me, brings to light that it's on that special meeting Monday.
Of course,
The
like before.
3rd. Okay, so
Right-
just like
right before
before.
the meeting.
Right before a meeting, there'll be a special meeting. Okay,
Just like it has
all
been.
right. Thanks for that clarification, because we do have those second and fourth special meeting times, so we're not talking about pushing it to that.
Right.
Good, thanks.
Or you run it late.
Are we running late?
Okay. Any other? Mr. Boykin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to affirm that that is a really great call out. The expectation that there is both a responsibility to the bondholders and the folks that hold us accountable. That cadence is important. I didn't think about that, and I think it's really important to just make sure that that is prevalent. So I just like where we landed. Will we make it a point to stay within cadence, if you will, if need be, have a special meeting to demonstrate how serious this is and how important it is for us to be fulfilling our responsibility. Thank you.
Any other clarification, comments, direction?
Nope.
Okay, then the meeting is adjourned.
All right. We're off and running. You deserve one.